something that's going on at the moment, or that we're seeing in European equities at the minute, and this is a grinding trend, or what I call a grinding trend day. Now, these are quite tough days to trade typically, whereby you end up with a day that drifts on higher, which keeps enticing people to trade, but never really gives you any kind of confirmation or move away. And that becomes a very difficult one to trade, because you get in, so say you're moving up, you buy it, excuse me, and you never get really paid on it. Meaning that then you sit through long periods of the market just chopping around you. You then have to maintain a great deal of patience, but also with doubt on how much further this is really going to go. So what I've got up at the moment is a few different examples of how they're created and how this can then help you trade them. So what we've got here is something that is not actually today, and this is where you get a grinding trend after a very strong initial move. So what you had on this day here is this very impulsive move higher, creates a small flag, and then another impulse higher. So this is what you would suggest is a breakout of positioning. Anyone short in this range gets forced out, and you get this rush up on the break of trend. This then, from a profile point of view, creates this very P-shaped profile, but this is created via a grind higher. The way to be looking at these type of moves is pullbacks towards low volume, and this would have helped you out all the way up the move anyway. That after this first surge higher, volume's established, and you then get low volume below. That gives you an entry there. After that though, this next phase of the move becomes quite a tough one. Whoops. Quite a tough one to actually then stay in. If you're then trying to get yourself in. If you're already in, not so tough. It's easier then to try and hold on. Once we then start to grind, this is where you can almost deal with these trades in looking actually at potential turnarounds. The one thing I caveat that with is don't go rushing into looking for a turnaround. What you want to be looking for is something like break of these highs, and where you get little surges on these grinding moves is breaks of previous highs. So break of this high, little surge. Break of this high, little surge higher. Whoops. Break of this high, little surge higher. So you get these mini bouts of pace, and you can deal with these by playing those. To deal with that, what you have to do is accept that this isn't necessarily going to be an explosive move that keeps putting you further and further on the side. You take the break of each little high and you go, right, break, get out, break, get out. If you're playing breakouts on these grinding moves, it becomes very difficult to stay in. And that's the nature of a grinding move. Another example here, this is the Bund rather than the DAX. Again, similar type move. You get this impulse to start with, but drift higher. So how do you play these? Well, one way to do it is once you've got these little surges up, that's what gives you a point of reference, and it's those little points of reference. The pullback there, and this is where patience really comes in. This is a 5-minute chart, and it sits for a full 45 minutes sideways. This is where you have to say to yourself, right, this is a grinding trend day. You've established that by this point because you can generally draw a reasonably clear trend. Grinding trend, pull back to previous high, get in, stop below that high, wait for the trend to resume. The difficulty as well then comes in, where do you get out? So you've got to be looking for old reference points to the upside. Now the other thing to be looking for on these grinding trends is the move back through a consolidation. So unlike this high and this high, once you get above them, this high then retests and starts to range sideways. So now we've got a different pattern. As the pattern changes, you break trend and we reverse back down. VWAP is often a good target, and I'll show you today how this works out rather nicely in the DAX. So that's one of the two ways to deal with these grinding trends. You either take each break and try and play on each break up, maintaining the mentality that this is going to be a small move. So each break up, you take break out, or you look at it from a pullback point of view and you buy the pullbacks. Buying the pullback is a trade that requires a lot more patience, but once you then get the break, this enables you to stay in it. So as you get a break out of this small range, you get the pullback. If you played the breakout trade there, you're then getting stuck on the pullback. So it's all about establishing quickly what type of day we're in. Soon as you start seeing this pattern of tight candles, but with a steady uptrend on them, then you can start looking at that and saying to yourself, okay, this is a grinding trend day, therefore I'm going to buy any dips back and then try and hold on to the next leg of the move after the dip back. Always aware that at some point you do quite often get a reversal as well. So I move back down once you set up some kind of range that fails to keep on going. Further example, and this is a particularly tough one on how you actually get in. With this one, again, you get this grind and move higher. Yes, there's an opportunity to get in from the beginning of the move, but once it then starts to grind, you got to think about what people's psychology is, people's mentality in this move. Anyone in here is just constantly trying to buy either towards the top or buy any small pullback to keep themselves in the trade. Only once you actually get a high that breaks with pace and then comes back to that high, so where the breakout point, that is what gives you your entry. So this is actually, to me, a day that you don't really have much of a play on this until quite a long way up the move. Rather than saying to yourself, oh, well, I could have been in down here for the break. You've got to ask yourself, even if you were, would you be able to sit through this chop, 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 chop higher? This is where the patience comes in to sit through this. If you play in the break as well, you get the break of the little range, shoots higher, and this aggressive impulse move, once again, is your reason then to start coming out of the trade. With it being a grinding trend, start coming out, but you can then hold something. This creates low volume and then allows you to play on to the next move. Once again though, with these grinding trends, you often get the situation where you then make a high, pull back, and this pullback, unlike this one, doesn't continue higher. Only when it breaks the bottom of the pullback can you then start thinking there's a short on. That gives you your first sense of a short. Next up, you're then looking for any pullback to try and get in on. So this again is your sort of passive entry. And then a break of that first impulse is where you then get the fast move down, as everyone who's been long through this then stops out. This then turns once again into a secondary grind higher, and you then get another grind on for the rest of the day. So the day maintains a bullish outlook, but the grind is what gets it up, and it is open to these sudden whips back. Okay, so we're going to have a look at what we currently got. Now I put this chart up at around about 9:30 this morning. Reason for doing that was to try and point out that you can pick these days. You can say, right, we're in a grinding trend day, and very quickly, got a lot of similarity to what we'd seen above. Day starts, dips down, and then you get surge, low volume. So there's your first in, if you want an in on this. Pull back to low volume. Now you look at the next move. Each break of a high, little surge. So you have two ways of doing it. You recognize the first impulse move here. That's giving you the clue that, and it's quite a predictable one because it was a break above the previous day's high out of this range. Once it surges, that's where you can say, right, now I've got a continuation trade on. You don't know at this point here that this is a grinding trend or a fast move. But as it then starts to slowly grind, you say, okay, it's a grinding trend. I now need to maintain some patience on this. I need to keep my stop. I need to hold on and wait for the move to progress. target wise, at least new high. And because it's a grinding trend, that may well give you a reason to then get out. As it pops the high, you go, okay, fine, I'll get out of it here. Or at least cover some and then wait for the next leg of the continuation. Now, next part of the trade is possibility of a reversal and always being ready and aware of that. This is what we then got. So this is the move on a 1 minute chart. Here comes the morning surge, and so the actual real spike up was still once you got over the high. So there was the main impulse of the move, and that's where the low volume buy comes in. Very quickly you realise that this is a grinding trend move. You could potentially have had an early in on this. Once the cash comes in, you get this fast move up, consolidates, and then starts again. You could be looking to try and buy the break of this move anyway, so you may well have been in on the break. Pullback holds to the low volume, and then you start this drift higher. Very common, you can get a nice, shallow trend line. And once you've got that, this is where we then bring back an old strategy that I'm sure many of you like, is the delta reversal trade. As soon as you get this spike in delta, which does coincide with the high, so this isn't a perfect delta reversal trade, but you get spike in delta, new high, we then consolidate and you get this little basing here around about the 13, 14 area. That's your point, that on a break of that, also the break of trend, that gives you a short. You don't get much for this, unfortunately, so it's going to be a difficult one to stay in. But the key thing here is as we go back up, delta continues to fall. You then get another consolidation higher, so this is an attempt to keep the move going. Once it gets back below 14s again, then you get the next leg down. Target wise, as we mentioned on that previous grinding trend, VWAP becomes a good target here for a small reaction and then a bounce back up into, and even you could well be looking to play this back through the range to the upside. So that's what you got to be thinking about with these grinding trends. What I'd also be looking at is what the profile's shaping up like. Now, if you go and look at the DAX, Euro stocks, profile-wise, this is looking very much a P-shaped day. So what this is showing is that people have been caught out. The shorts got out, which caused the fast move up. We're now consolidating. So this now looks like a reasonably slow continuation of move. Yes, we may get a new high, but I wouldn't be looking at this to then trend on too much further. So if we are buying VWAP, 14s is going to be key as to whether this can actually keep on going, and then you're looking for a new high and very little more. If this continues to keep pushing volume value higher, and you would have seen that by now, we'd then be looking at this and thinking this is a grinding trend and a trend for the rest of the day. But the fact that we have now had this pullback suggests this is more P-shape. You look where the pullback drops to, not only is it VWAP, it's the low volume. Very, very typical on a P-shaped day. That low volume holds the grind higher. Okay, so that's grinding trends. So a couple of things to remember with those. Establish it quickly. You can play breakouts, but if you do, look for minimal targets and be ready to get out of them quick. The way to get in a trade and stay in is to be looking for a pullback, let it settle, generally on a previous high on the move up, and then you've got to exercise patience and wait for it then to progress. Take out the high. Once it's taken the high out, that's where you can start looking at that potentially then to become the next level of support, and it keep on going. And the trending, sort of proper trend grinding trend days, if you get what I mean by that, are ones where each high it will come back and it will hold, break again, hold, break again, hold.